Okay. Well, thank you, Joanne, for that great introduction. And believe me, it's all downhill from here. But never mind. I'm really astonished as to how very adept and really remarkably able she has been in organizing this truly stimulating series of talks. And I think it's just great that you've managed to put aside your own money. You know, you're doing this on your own buck and then get these people. Delighted to be speaking with Michael. So let me tell you what I'm going to do, because I might as well tell you what this PowerPoint is about, because I'm not going to rely on the PowerPoint, as it were, to get the message. So here's my message in a nutshell. There is about 1.5 billion, maybe 2 billion people who can be described as the other third of the world, who belongs to what I would describe as the low energy world. Now, all of you belong to a high energy world. So do many parts of the developing world, like China and India. They rely on high energy, meaning hydrocarbon energy, to support the lifestyle that we enjoy. Now, in the low energy world, people don't have access to energy for basically 5 aspects of life. They don't have access to energy for cooking. I'll be expanding on this. They don't have access to energy for lighting. They don't have access to energy for clean water, to create clean water, and they don't have access to energy for sanitation, to create the water, bring in water and keep their places clean. And they don't have energy for what could be described as mechanical energy or motive power, particularly as far as women and children are concerned, because they bear the brunt of the domestic burden of work. So how do you, the topic here is, how do you empower these people? And I'll put it out straight away. Empowering could mean giving them access to electricity, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, if you look at those 5 areas that I mentioned, start with the first one and I'll describe it later. I mean, there's energy that come from thermal sources, from mechanical, non-electric circles, not so much chemical, but certainly thermal and mechanical energy. And getting electricity to these parts of the world is going to be tremendously expensive. So what the thesis of this suggestion is that the burdened peoples of the world, this is John Rawls, the great philosopher who talked about the duty of assistance to burdened peoples, and these would be they, can be assisted by non-electric power through what we call appropriate, or I would describe it as appropriate sustainable energy technologies or assets. It's kind of mundane technologies, not the high energy, gee whiz, you know, I'm winning the Nobel Prize type of research that goes into it, but it's very important work. So that's the crux of the thesis. So now I can go through I'll go through this PowerPoint so that I don't have to linger. But if you have any questions, no, I better hold back on you better hold back on the questions till I finished. Yeah, it's going to say, you know, all right. So empowering the energy poor. And so this is the outline. I'm going to talk about the crucial importance. I gave it the crux, but here's a little more flesh. The critical importance of why energy is important, the extent of energy poverty or the energy poor, 5 critical areas of human need. Empowering energy poor does not always involve electricity, and appropriate sustainable energy technologies offer interim steps to do this. So now the importance of energy. A number of people, scholars, writers across the spectrum of physical sciences, chemical sciences, life sciences, behavioral sciences, have argued the case that what distinguishes a civilization, a progressive civilization, one that advances from one that doesn't, is the extent to which that civilization has used exogenous energy, energy outside yourself, for the purposes of doing the jobs you need to do, whatever they might be. So if you look at even people who have looked at the ancient civilizations of Mesopotamia, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, Harappa, China, Egypt, will tell you that these guys have done this. And here's Herbert Spencer, who's an old polymath, he's a polymath from England, talked about energy being the primary reason for societal differences. L.A. White was a sociologist, anthropologist. Fred Cottrell was also a sociologist. Rogan and Herman Daly. I mean, this guy, Oswald, was chemistry Nobel Prize winner. Frederick Soddy was too, and Ayers is a. So what they were saying is, and I won't go into this, is that without energy, you can't progress. So now we come to the low energy world, the people that I was talking to you about, the other third. These guys lack clean energy for cooking, lighting, drinking water, sanitation, and domestic labor. Guys, women included, that is. It's 1.7 to 2.5 billion, you know, there's no real calculated way in which it's being done. It depends on where you're coming from, but think of it as, you know, approximately 1.5 billion people. And this results in what I've described in other situations as silent violence, which primarily falls on women. But there's something called the energy ladder, which people have propounded, which says that you move up from crop dung and waste to wood, charcoal, kerosene, LPG to electricity is from 1 to 4. And okay, to cut a long story short, the United Nations is now launched on energy access for all by 2030. They want to give energy access, by which they mean electricity for all by 2030. Now, here's the issue with that. I love that. I mean, I love that you can get it by 2030. They're not going to, but it's all right. It's great to have a good objective. So what they have done is they said the International Energy Agency, which is the premier agency doing research in this area, and the World Bank have said, in order to give access to energy for the burdened people, we need to spend an annual $50 billion. International Institute for Applied Sciences puts it at 55 to 86 billion. But guys like these two guys, I know them, Bazilian and Pilkey, think it's more like between $1 trillion to $17 trillion per year. Per year until 2030. Now, where is this money coming from? I mean, it's such a large amount of dollars. I've seen the fall, you know, leaves fall in the fall, in the autumns, and I'm just thinking, even if you collected all those leaves, I don't think you're going to find 17 trillion in an area. It's going to such a lot of money. And so what people have suggested is that you do a bit of leapfrogging, you know, from one side of the where you are desperately poor with absolutely no access to energy, to electricity, and that's a little difficult and fraught with some difficulties. So what I'm suggesting is that pending the arrival of this electricity, which is a great thing, that we should do something about the plight of these people, because these people need to be empowered with energy. And so what I'm suggesting, and others have taken this on to a small extent, is that you do appropriate sustainable energy technologies, assets for cooking, you know, for water filtration. And I've listed these. I want to give you a few examples as we go, but there's irrigation, draft animal, lighting. You know, people often forget that in many of the ancient societies and civilizations, the primary source of energy came from draft animals. Even now in Asia and many parts of the world, they say, oh, really? Draft animals? Yes, they do. And draft animals are such a great source of energy. And if they've found research to say that if you get a better harness for draft animals, they can give up to 40% more productive effort labor. So there's draft animal technology, transportation, waste management, housing, local electric, human power. I'll leave this with you. Now, let me go through some of these things. Energy for cooking and heating. 2.5 billion use biomass for cooking and heating. Now, that is 2.5 billion, but let me get to the figures. Accounting for 40% of world primary energy, 10 to 14% according to the IEA. But here's the snorter in this. 3.5 million people, primarily women and children, die from using this biomass, which is agricultural waste and manure. And how do they die? Because when they're burning it, they got a kid on their back, and this black and white smoke, which is really smoke containing a lot of particulate matters, PM 2.5 and PM10, causes a litany of terrible respiratory ailments. That's how they die. And so you can actually, that's a woman cooking with a child. That's what you see in billions of homes. And then this is silent violence being inflicted on this woman, by the way. I mean, I talked about it earlier on today. Silent violence because it's institutional violence, you know. What are these women to do? What are these kids to do? the lack of energy causes this problem. So the answer is a kind of cook stove, you know, which you can get them a different source of energy, but to get, let's say, some briquettes of energy made with some other vegetation requires vegetation. In sub-Saharan Africa and many parts of the developing world, in South America, like the Andean region, where you're above the tree line, there's no vegetation. So you really change the way of cooking. So you have this cook stove, which is a better source of, I mean, the reason there's all this emissions of particulate matter is because there's bad combustion. So the cook stove gives good, supposed to give good combustion, but look at these wretched cook stoves. I mean, they are not exactly what's going to be a prescription to your ills. In fact, in India, they did about 4 years ago, installed 200,000 cook stoves in poor homes. They did a 2-year monitoring to see how good the cook stoves had been, and they were wretched because in many cases the air in the room, what's called indoor air pollution, was worse than what it was before they did the cook stove. So you have to design a good cook stove. That's a challenge. It's a technology challenge. It's not one that we think about, but here is one company, that EnviroFit, that does different types of cook stoves. They range from $75 to $300-400, but you really got to find a way in which this can get cheaper. Let's move on to the next thing, lack of clean drinking water and sanitation. 3.5 million deaths per year. How am I doing for okay, I can do that in 6 minutes. Okay, so now look at this. This is clean water and sanitation resulting in 3.5 million deaths, primarily of children in this particular case. And the black and red, those bad areas. So there's a lot of stuff that so to do basic sanitation, to do even drinking water, this is a way lots of people carry water on their heads. So not a good thing. So here's an asset number one. That's what is called a treadle pump. There's an outfit based in Colorado called IDE, Industrial Development Enterprises. They've sold 1.5 million of these treadle pumps. Now, doesn't that look like a bamboo sort of treadmill? Not treadmill, what is it? Stairmaster, right? Yeah, it's not bamboo. This one is wood, but I've seen other pictures with like bamboo. Another asset, the play pump. So here's what happens. Kids on the pump, it pulls the water from the ground, goes up, and people get it from faucet. Do you think it's fun and games doing that? You know, what they found though over the years is that it looks great on show you on a picture, but kids don't want to be going round and round the treadle pump for 8 hours a day, you know. That's not what they think of as play. So this is, but it is a place where you can collect some water and maybe kids can have a good time doing it. But look at the ancient ways they did it. They use oxen, they use draft animals. This is done in ancient civilizations all over the world. They were pulling water and use it for water, for sanitation, for whatever. But here's something that happened in India. This is called big company called Tata. Took 8 years to develop a clean drinking water filter, which doesn't use electricity. There's no electricity. There might be some electricity who can make plastic without relying on petrochemicals. So there is petroleum involved in this. But basically, this satisfies all US EPA requirements for bacteria as well as viruses. It's a really $13, $16, $19, the super version. They've sold 1 million of these. Lack of lighting. Over 1.3 billion people worldwide lack access. Families may spend up to half their income on kerosene. Not a kerosene lamp emits so much carbon, and it's responsible for 1.5 million deaths from burns and respiratory illnesses annually, 62% of which are. So here's a good answer, appropriate technology. This is Nokero, the solar light bulbs. They sell for about $6 each or $7. And it can give you 4 hours of light, which is better than no light. And I'm just giving you a few examples. And so I want to stop here simply because I want to put my thesis to you that we spend so much of our research and development budget, billions and hundreds of billions of dollars, on pushing forward the frontiers of high technology for high energy peoples. If we spent, you know, maybe 1/10 or 1% of the US research budget on figuring out appropriate technologies that would empower the poorest of the poor, I think we are going to proceed with leaps and bounds. So I can go on giving you more examples of this, but my 15 minutes up? Yeah. Oh, well, you know, they say that if you have nothing to say, you shouldn't say it. But I do have a lot more to say, but I'm going to stop because maybe the only thing to do is to go back to some of those. I don't have slides, but you know, women are pounding grain and pounding stuff all the time, and it's backbreaking labor. So I thought I had that slide. Okay, so I haven't got that slide. But you know, people, and they're breaking nuts with stones. There are intermediate technologies can take that. Well, it's not electrical energy, it's mechanical energy, but it's ways in which people can move forward. So in each area, each of these 5 areas, whether it be cooking, make a thermal energy cook stove, with lighting, these PVC bulbs, sanitation and different ways of getting to water and filtering it, motive power, again, different ways of doing this. This is not a final panacea for getting power to people, good electric power, but it is certainly an interim measure, and it's something that we ought to be considering. So thank you. Michael?